The morning Sarah Ellis first noticed the cowboy watching her from beneath the brim of his dusty Stetson. She had been delivering milk to the saloon in Fort McDowell, Arizona Territory, and her hands were so cold from the early October chill of 1882 that she nearly dropped the heavy metal canisters right there in the dirt street. She had been making these deliveries every morning for the past 3 months, ever since her father had taken ill and could no longer manage the route himself. The dairy farm sat just 2 miles outside of town, a modest operation with 12 cows that her father had built from nothing after the war. Now, at 19 years old, Sarah found herself responsible for keeping the business running while her father lay bedridden, his lungs ravaged by pneumonia that would not break despite all the medicine the town doctor could provide. The cowboy stood near the hitching post outside the mercantile, one boot propped against the weathered wood, his eyes following her movements with an intensity that made her heart flutter unexpectedly. She had seen plenty of cowboys in her life, Fort McDowell being a crossroads for cattle drives and a station for the cavalry protecting settlers from the occasional Apache raids. But something about this one made her pause. He was tall, probably standing well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that spoke of hard work and a life lived outdoors. His shirt was faded blue, tucked into worn leather chaps, and a bandana hung loose around his neck, dusty from the trail. But it was his face that caught her attention most. Young but weathered, with a strong jaw shadowed by a few days of stubble and eyes that were remarkably blue even from this distance. Sarah realized she had been staring and quickly looked away, focusing on maneuvering the milk canisters up the steps of the saloon. The owner, a gruff man named Murphy, always paid on time and never complained about the early hour. She knocked twice and waited, trying not to glance back at the cowboy who she could still feel watching her. Murphy opened the door, his mustache twitching as he yawned. "Morning, Miss Ellis. Right on time as always." "Good morning, Mr. Murphy. 2 gallons today, same as usual." She handed him the canisters, accepting the empty ones from yesterday in return. "How is your father doing?" Murphy asked, his voice softening with genuine concern. "About the same. Doctor says we just have to wait and see." Sarah forced a smile, not wanting to discuss the fear that kept her awake most nights, the terror that she might lose the only family she had left. Murphy nodded sympathetically and handed her the payment for the week, a few coins that clinked into her palm. "You tell him we are all praying for him." "I will, thank you." As she turned to leave, she nearly collided with the cowboy, who had apparently crossed the street while she was inside. He caught her elbow to steady her, his hand warm even through the fabric of her dress. "Pardon me, miss. Did not mean to startle you." His voice was deep, with a slight drawl that suggested he was from Texas, maybe Oklahoma. "That is quite all right." Sarah stepped back, suddenly very aware of how she must look in her plain work dress, her blonde hair pulled back in a simple braid, no doubt smelling of the barn despite her best efforts to wash up before leaving home. He removed his hat, revealing dark brown hair that needed a trim. "Name's Tom Sullivan. Most folks call me Tom. I just hired on at the Rocking W Ranch, and I could not help but notice you have been delivering milk all over town. My employer mentioned wanting to arrange for regular deliveries out to the ranch. Would that be something you might consider?" The Rocking W was the largest cattle operation in the area, sprawling over thousands of acres with a reputation for fair dealings and good pay. A contract with them would solve her family's financial worries for months to come. "That would be very welcome, Mr. Sullivan. How much would you need?" "Probably 5 gallons daily, maybe more when we have the full crew in from the range. We got about 30 men working the ranch, and the cook is always complaining about running short on fresh milk." Sarah did quick calculations in her head. They could manage that if she milked an additional cow or two each morning. I believe we can accommodate that. When would you like to start? How about tomorrow? I can ride out to your place this evening to discuss payment and details if that suits you. There was something in the way he looked at her, respectful but openly admiring, that made her cheeks warm. That would be fine. The Ellis Dairy Farm, 2 miles north on the main road. You cannot miss it. I will be there around sunset if that is not too late. That would be perfect. He replaced his hat and nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth before he turned and walked toward the livery stable. Sarah watched him go, wondering why her heart was beating so fast over a simple business arrangement. The rest of her deliveries passed in a blur. She dropped off milk at the hotel, the doctor's office, and 3 private homes before loading the empty canisters back onto her wagon. The sun had fully risen by then, warming the October air to a comfortable temperature. The Arizona sky stretched endlessly blue above her, dotted with a few wispy clouds. As she drove the wagon back toward the farm, Sarah allowed herself to think about Thomas Sullivan. He seemed polite, well-spoken despite his cowboy drawl, and there had been a kindness in his eyes that she had not expected. Most cowboys who passed through Fort McDowell were rough men, more interested in the saloon girls and gambling than in respectable conversation. But Tom had been different, gentle in the way he steadied her, careful in how he spoke. She shook her head at her own foolishness. He was probably just being professional, securing a business arrangement for his employer. She would do well to remember that and not let her imagination run wild with romantic notions better suited to the dime novels she sometimes read by candlelight. Her father was awake when she returned, propped up on pillows in the small bedroom off the main living area. His face was pale and drawn, his breathing labored, but his eyes brightened when she entered. "How were the deliveries?" he asked, his voice weak. "Good, Papa, and I have excellent news. A cowboy from the Rocking W wants to arrange regular deliveries to the ranch, 5 gallons a day, possibly more." Her father's expression lifted with relief. "That is wonderful, Sarah. That will help considerably with the medical bills." She sat on the edge of his bed, taking his thin hand in hers. "A representative from the ranch will be coming by this evening to discuss the details." "His name is Thomas Sullivan." "Sullivan, you say? I knew a Sullivan family back in Missouri, good people. You make sure to negotiate a fair price. Do not let them take advantage just because you are young." "I will not, Papa. I learned from the best." She squeezed his hand gently. The day passed quickly as Sarah threw herself into the endless work the farm demanded. She fed the chickens, collected eggs, repaired a section of fence that had come loose, and began the afternoon milking early so she would have time to make herself presentable before Tom's arrival. By the time the sun began its descent toward the horizon, painting the desert landscape in shades of orange and gold, Sarah had changed into her better dress, a simple but clean garment of deep green cotton that brought out the color of her hazel eyes. She had taken down her braid and re-pinned her hair in a more becoming style, then immediately felt ridiculous for the effort. This was a business meeting, nothing more. The sound of hoofbeats drew her to the window. Tom rode a sturdy bay gelding, sitting easy in the saddle with the natural grace of someone who spent most of his life on horseback. He dismounted smoothly and tied his horse to the rail near the water trough before approaching the house. Sarah opened the door before he could knock, suddenly nervous in a way that had nothing to do with business negotiations. "Good evening, Mr. Sullivan." "Evening, Miss Ellis. I hope I am not too early." "Not at all. Please come in." She led him into the modest sitting room, gesturing for him to take a seat in one of the 2 chairs near the fireplace. May I offer you some coffee? That would be much appreciated, thank you. As she prepared the coffee, Sarah was acutely aware of his presence, the way he seemed to fill the small room despite sitting quietly. When she returned with 2 cups, she found him looking at the photographs on the mantel, pictures of her family from before her mother had died 5 years ago. You favor your mother, he said softly, accepting the coffee cup from her. Thank you. She passed when I was 14. I am sorry. I lost my own mother around that age. It is a hard thing. They sat in silence for a moment, the shared understanding of loss creating an unexpected intimacy. Then Tom cleared his throat and straightened in his chair. About the milk delivery. The rocking W is prepared to pay 20 cents per gallon, which I believe is the going rate in these parts. We would need delivery 6 days a week, preferably early morning so the cook has what he needs for breakfast. Sarah considered. 20 cents was fair, perhaps even slightly generous. That would be acceptable. I usually make my town deliveries starting at sunrise. I could bring your order to the ranch first, around 6 o'clock if that suits. That would be perfect, though that is quite a long day for you making all those deliveries yourself. I manage well enough. My father taught me to be efficient. How is your father? I heard in town that he has been ill. The genuine concern in his voice made Sarah's throat tighten unexpectedly. He has pneumonia. It has been over a month now and he is not improving as we had hoped. That must be difficult, managing everything alone. I do what needs to be done. The animals depend on me and we need the income. She said it matter-of-factly, not looking for sympathy, but Tom's expression softened. If you ever need help with anything, heavy work or such, I would be happy to assist. I know we are just now meeting, but I was raised to believe neighbors should help one another. The offer touched her more than she wanted to admit. That is very kind, Mr. Sullivan. Please call me Tom. Mr. Sullivan makes me feel like I should be wearing a suit and working in a bank. She smiled at that, relaxing slightly. Then you must call me Sarah. They talked for another hour, the conversation drifting from business to more personal topics. Sarah learned that Tom was 23, originally from a small town outside of San Antonio, and that he had been working cattle since he was 15. He had come to Arizona seeking better opportunities and had been fortunate to land a position at the Rocking W, which had a reputation for treating their cowboys well. In turn, Sarah shared stories of growing up on the dairy farm, the challenges and small joys of the work, and her hope that her father would recover enough to take over again. She found Tom surprisingly easy to talk to, his questions thoughtful and his attention focused entirely on her in a way that made her feel truly heard. When he finally stood to leave, full darkness had fallen outside, and Sarah realized with surprise how quickly the time had passed. I should head back before they start worrying I got lost, Tom said, setting down his empty coffee cup. Thank you for the hospitality, Sarah. I will see you tomorrow morning at the ranch. I will be there at 6. At the door, he paused and turned back to her. I meant what I said about helping if you need it. I know we just met, but something tells me we are going to be good friends. Sarah's heart did that strange flutter again. I would like that. After he left, she stood in the doorway watching until his silhouette disappeared into the darkness, the sound of his horse's hoofbeats gradually fading. She touched her hand to her chest, feeling her heart still racing. He seems like a good man. Her father's weak voice came from the bedroom. Sarah jumped, not realizing he had been awake to overhear. She moved to his doorway. He does. The contract with the Rocking W will help us tremendously. Her father's knowing smile suggested he understood there was more to her interest than just business, but he simply nodded. Get some rest, daughter. You have an early morning. That night, Sarah lay in her narrow bed listening to the familiar sounds of the farm, the soft lowing of the cows, the rustle of wind through the cottonwood trees near the creek. But her mind was filled with images of blue eyes and a gentle smile, of strong hands and a kind voice. She told herself not to be foolish, that she was reading too much into simple politeness. But as she finally drifted to sleep, she found herself looking forward to sunrise with an eagerness that had nothing to do with business. The next morning, Sarah woke even earlier than usual, telling herself it was just to ensure she had everything prepared for the new delivery. She completed the milking with practiced efficiency, loaded the wagon with the canisters designated for the rocking W, and set out while stars still dotted the pre-dawn sky. The ranch sprawled across a valley between two low ridges, the main house a substantial structure of adobe and wood with a wide porch. Several outbuildings dotted the property, including a large barn, bunkhouse, cookhouse, and various sheds and corrals. Even at this early hour, the place buzzed with activity as cowboys prepared for the day's work. Sarah guided her wagon to the cookhouse as directed, where a portly man with a white apron emerged to greet her. "You must be Miss Ellis. Tom told me to expect you. I am George, the cook around here." He had a friendly face and a thick German accent. "Pleased to meet you, George. I have 5 gallons for you this morning." As George helped her unload the canisters, Sarah caught sight of Tom emerging from the barn leading his saddled horse. He spotted her and immediately changed direction, walking toward the cookhouse with that easy stride. "Morning, Sarah. I see you found us without trouble." "Good morning. Your directions were excellent." George glanced between them with barely concealed amusement. "I will take these inside and get you the empties from yesterday. Tom, why do not you keep Miss Ellis company so she does not think we are all rude out here?" After George disappeared into the cookhouse, Tom stepped closer, and Sarah noticed he had shaved since yesterday, his jaw clean and smooth. "I hope the drive out was not too difficult in the dark," he said. "I know these roads well. I have been navigating them since I was a girl. Still, it seems like a lot for one person. Have you ever considered hiring help? We cannot afford it right now, not with the medical expenses." She said it without self-pity, just stating facts. Tom nodded thoughtfully. What if someone were willing to work just for the experience, learning about dairy farming? I have worked cattle my whole life but never learned much about dairy operations. Might be useful knowledge. Sarah looked at him skeptically. "You want to learn dairy farming? I want to help you," he said simply. "And I figured you might accept help easier if I framed it as me getting something out of it too." The honesty of it, the straightforward kindness, made Sarah's breath catch. "That is incredibly generous, but I could not ask you to work for free." "You are not asking, I am offering. I usually have Sundays off. What if I came by then to help with whatever needs doing? Heavy work, repairs, whatever you need." Before Sarah could respond, George returned with the empty canisters and the payment for the week's deliveries. "Here you are, Miss Ellis. And I must say, this milk is the finest we have had in some time. The men were commenting on it at breakfast yesterday. I am glad to hear it. My father always insisted on keeping the cows healthy and the equipment clean. It makes a difference." As Sarah prepared to leave, Tom walked with her to the wagon. "Think about my offer. No pressure, but the invitation stands." Sarah climbed onto the wagon seat, looking down at him. In the growing light of dawn, his eyes were even more striking than she remembered. "All right. If you truly do not mind, I could use help fixing the roof on the main barn. It leaks when it rains, and I have been dreading trying to manage it alone." His face lit up with a genuine smile that transformed his usually serious expression. "I will be there Sunday morning. What time?" "Whenever you like. I am always awake early. How about 8? That will give you time for your morning work. 8 would be perfect." As she drove away, Sarah glanced back once to see Tom still standing there, watching her go. Several other cowboys had gathered nearby, and she could see them ribbing him about something. But Tom just shook his head and climbed onto his horse, a small smile still playing at his lips. The days until Sunday passed in a strange mix of anticipation and routine. Each morning, Sarah delivered milk to the rocking W, and each morning, Tom found a reason to be near the cookhouse when she arrived. Their conversations were brief, limited by her other deliveries, waiting, and his work obligations, but each exchange left Sarah wanting more. On Wednesday, he showed her a hawk's nest he had discovered in one of the cottonwoods near the creek that ran through the ranch property. On Thursday, he brought her fresh eggs from the ranch chickens, insisting George had given him extra. On Friday, he shyly presented her with a small bundle of wildflowers he claimed to have found while riding fence lines. By Saturday evening, Sarah could barely contain her excitement about the next morning, though she tried to hide it from her father, whose health had shown slight improvement with the reduction in his stress over finances. Sunday dawned clear and beautiful, the October air crisp, but not cold. Sarah completed her morning chores and was just finishing breakfast when she heard a horse approaching. She glanced at the clock. 7:30. Tom was early. She met him outside, where he was already unloading tools from his saddlebags, a hammer, nails, and what looked like spare wood planks tied to his saddle. "I thought I would come prepared," he explained. "Figured you might not have roofing materials on hand." "That was very thoughtful." "How much do I owe you for the materials?" "Nothing. The foreman at the ranch let me have some scraps that were just going to waste anyway." They worked together throughout the morning, Tom handling the more dangerous parts of the repair while Sarah assisted from below, handing up materials and holding the ladder steady. It felt comfortable, natural, working alongside him. Tom was patient and careful, taking his time to do the job properly. Around noon, Sarah insisted they break for lunch. She had prepared extra food, cold chicken, and fresh bread with butter and jam. They sat in the shade of the porch, and Sarah brought out lemonade she had made that morning. "This is delicious," Tom said, accepting a second glass. "You are quite talented in the kitchen. My mother taught me before she died. She said a woman should know how to run a proper household. She taught you well." He paused, then added, "Though I imagine you are capable of much more than just household tasks." Sarah looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "You run this entire farm essentially by yourself, manage the business, care for your father, and from what George tells me, you negotiate better prices than most men he has dealt with. That takes real intelligence and strength." No one had ever complimented her quite like that before. Most people either pitied her situation or questioned whether a young woman should be handling such responsibilities. To have someone recognize her competence, her capability, made emotion swell in her chest. "Thank you, Tom. That means more than you might realize." He held her gaze for a long moment, something passing between them that felt significant, weighty with possibility. Then Tom cleared his throat and stood. "We should finish that roof before the day gets away from us." By late afternoon, the repair was complete, and the barn roof looked better than it had in years. Sarah stood back admiring the work while Tom cleaned up the tools. "I cannot thank you enough for this. I have been worried about that roof for months. Happy to help. And I meant what I said about learning dairy operations. If you ever want to show me around, explain how everything works, I would be genuinely interested." Sarah smiled. "Would you like a tour now?" She showed him the entire operation. explaining how she rotated the cows through different pastures, the importance of cleanliness in preventing disease, the specific diet she maintained to ensure quality milk. Tom listened attentively, asking intelligent questions that showed he was truly interested. In the milking barn, Sarah demonstrated the process with one of the gentler cows, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. It is all about rhythm and patience. Rush it, and you will stress the cow and get less milk. Can I try? Sarah stepped back, and Tom took her place on the stool, looking comically large next to the cow. His first attempts were clumsy, but he was a quick learner, and soon he had established a basic rhythm. "You are a natural," Sarah said, unable to suppress her laughter at his look of intense concentration. "I have milked a cow before, just not often. We always had beef cattle, not dairy." He looked up at her, grinning. "Though I must say I have never enjoyed it quite this much before." The way he said it, the warmth in his eyes, made Sarah's pulse quicken. She became suddenly aware of how close they were standing in the dim barn, dust motes floating in the slanted afternoon light. Tom stood, wiping his hands on his pants. "Sarah, I hope I am not being too forward, but I would very much like to call on you properly. Not just helping with work, but actual courting, if you would allow it." Her heart soared. "I would like that very much." His smile was radiant. "Would you do me the honor of accompanying me to the church social next Saturday? I know it is short notice." "I would love to." That evening, after Tom had left with promises to see her the next morning at the ranch, Sarah sat with her father and told him about the invitation. Her father's smile was knowing. "I had a feeling about that young man. He has good character, I can tell. But Sarah, you be careful with your heart. I know you are sensible, but falling in love can make even the wisest person do foolish things." "Who said anything about falling in love?" Sarah protested, but her blush gave her away. "I see how you light up when you talk about him. Just promise me you will take your time, get to know him properly before making any serious decisions." "I promise, Papa." But even as she said it, Sarah suspected it might already be too late to guard her heart. Tom Sullivan had somehow slipped past her defenses with his kindness, his respect, his genuine interest in her as a person rather than just a pretty face. She was falling for him, and the realization was both thrilling and terrifying. The week leading up to the church social passed in a blur of heightened emotions. Each morning delivery became the highlight of Sarah's day. Tom started timing his work so he could spend a few extra minutes talking with her, and their conversations ranged from practical matters to deeper topics, dreams and fears, hopes for the future. On Tuesday, Tom told her about his desire to one day own his own ranch, a smaller operation than the Rocking W, but something he could build with his own hands. "I have been saving my wages, learning everything I can. Maybe in 5 or 10 years, I will have enough." "That is a wonderful dream," Sarah said. "My father always said there is dignity in building something from nothing." "What about you? What are your dreams?" Sarah had never really allowed herself to dream beyond keeping the farm running and her father healthy. "I suppose I have always just wanted stability, security, a family of my own someday." "That is not foolish at all. Those are good things to want." On Thursday, Tom brought her a book he had borrowed from the ranch foreman's wife, a collection of poetry by Walt Whitman. "I remembered you mentioning you liked to read. I thought you might enjoy this." Sarah was touched by the thoughtfulness. "I will take good care of it and return it soon. Keep it as long as you like. I already read my favorite poems." That night, Sarah read through the book and found a pressed wildflower marking one particular poem, "When I Heard the Learned Astronomer." The romantic gesture made her heart flutter. By Saturday, Sarah was a bundle of nervous energy. She had only one good dress suitable for a social event, a blue cotton print that she had worn to church, but never to anything as significant as this. She spent extra time on her hair, pinning it up in a more elaborate style than her usual practical braid. Her father, who had been well enough to sit up in a chair for short periods, watched her preparations with amusement. "You look beautiful, Sarah. That young man will not know what hit him." Tom arrived promptly at 6, driving a small buggy he had borrowed from the ranch. He wore clean dark pants, a white shirt, and a string tie, his hair neatly combed and his boots polished. When Sarah opened the door, his expression was worth all her preparation efforts. "Sarah, you look absolutely beautiful." "Thank you. You clean up quite well yourself." The church social was held in the town's community hall, a simple wooden structure that served for everything from dances to town meetings. When Sarah and Tom arrived, the place was already crowded with families and young couples. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting warm light over tables laden with food brought by various townswomen. Several people greeted Sarah warmly, asking after her father's health and complimenting her on the quality of her milk deliveries. Tom stayed close to her side, his hand occasionally resting lightly on her lower back in a gesture that was both protective and proprietary. They filled plates with food and found seats at one of the long tables. Tom introduced her to several of his fellow cowboys from the Rocking W, men with weathered faces and easy laughs who clearly respected Tom. "So you are the milk girl Tom has not stopped talking about," one of them said with a grin. "Nice to finally put a face to the name." Tom shot his friend a look, but Sarah just laughed. "I hope he has said good things. Only that you make the best milk in Arizona territory and have a smile that could light up the whole desert." Tom's ears turned red, and Sarah felt her own cheeks warming. But she was pleased to know Tom had been talking about her to his friends. When the music started, a local band with a fiddle, guitar, and banjo, Tom offered his hand. "Would you dance with me?" Sarah had not danced in years, not since before her mother died, but she placed her hand in Tom's and let him lead her to the cleared area serving as a dance floor. He was surprisingly graceful for such a large man, guiding her through a simple waltz with confidence. "Where did a cowboy learn to dance like this?" Sarah asked, genuinely impressed. "My mother insisted all her children learn proper manners, including dancing. She said you never know when you might need to make a good impression." She sounds like a wise woman. She was. "I wish you could have met her. I think you two would have gotten along wonderfully." They danced several more songs, and between dances, Tom introduced Sarah to more people, including the ranch foreman and his wife, a kind woman who insisted Sarah must come visit sometime. As the evening wore on, they stepped outside for some fresh air, walking a little way from the hall where the noise of the celebration faded to a distant murmur. The October night was cool, and Sarah shivered slightly. Without a word, Tom removed his jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Thank you." They stood looking up at the stars, so bright out here away from the lantern light, scattered across the sky in countless millions. "I have really enjoyed this evening," Tom said quietly. "More than I have enjoyed anything in a long time. So have I." He turned to face her, and in the moonlight, his expression was serious, vulnerable. "Sarah, I know we have not known each other long, just a couple of weeks really, but I feel like I have known you much longer. You are unlike anyone I have ever met. You are strong, capable, kind, intelligent. When I am with you, everything feels right in a way it never has before." Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "I feel the same way. These past weeks, seeing you every morning, it has become the best part of my day." Tom reached up and gently cupped her face in his hand, his thumb brushing her cheek. "May I kiss you?" "Yes." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but Sarah had never been more certain of anything. When his lips met hers, gentle and sweet, the world seemed to fall away. There was only this moment, this feeling, the warmth of his mouth on hers and the thundering of her heart. When they finally pulled apart, Tom rested his forehead against hers. "I am falling in love with you, Sarah Ellis. I know it is too soon to say it, but it is the truth." Tears pricked Sarah's eyes, but they were happy tears. "It is not too soon. I am falling in love with you too." They kissed again, longer this time, and Sarah felt like she was floating. She had never experienced anything like this overwhelming rush of emotion, the feeling that she had found something precious and rare. They stayed outside talking for another hour, making quiet confessions and sharing hopes for the future. Tom told her he wanted to court her properly, with her father's blessing. Sarah told him that her father already approved of him, had said as much just that morning. When Tom finally drove her home, they sat in the buggy outside her house for a long time, reluctant to part. He kissed her goodnight 3 more times before finally forcing himself to climb down and help her from the buggy. "I will see you tomorrow morning," he said, still holding her hand. "I will count the hours." Sarah floated into the house, Tom's jacket still wrapped around her shoulders. Her father was asleep, but she knew he would want to hear all about the evening in the morning. She got ready for bed in a daze, replaying every moment, every word, every touch. As she lay in the darkness, Sarah sent up a silent prayer of thanks. For the first time in years, she felt truly hopeful about the future. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she felt certain she could face them as long as Tom was by her side. The next morning, Sarah woke early as always, but the routine chores felt different, infused with joy. She sang while milking the cows, something she had not done in years. Even the long drive to the rocking W seemed shorter, her anticipation making the miles fly by. Tom was waiting near the cookhouse as always, but when she pulled the wagon to a stop, he immediately came to help her down, his hands spanning her waist. "Good morning," he said, his eyes searching her face. "I was afraid I might have dreamed last night." "It was real," Sarah assured him, smiling. "Very real." George emerged from the cookhouse and took in the scene with knowing eyes. "Ah, young love, it does my heart good. Tom, help the lady with those canisters before you make complete fools of yourselves in front of the whole ranch." They both laughed, but Tom did as suggested, helping Sarah unload the milk while George disappeared back inside. "I spoke with my foreman this morning," Tom said as they worked. "Told him I was courting you officially. He said I could adjust my schedule to have every Sunday off and occasional evenings when work permits. That is wonderful. I want to spend as much time with you as possible, Sarah. I meant everything I said last night. So did I." Over the following weeks, Tom and Sarah settled into a pattern of courtship that felt both exciting and comfortable. Tom continued to help at the farm every Sunday, tackling various repairs and improvements that Sarah had been unable to manage alone. They worked together easily, finding a natural rhythm in their partnership. On Sundays after work, they would sit on the porch and talk for hours, sharing stories from their pasts and dreams for their futures. Tom told her about growing up in Texas, about the brother he had lost to fever when they were boys, about the loneliness of the cowboy life before he met her. Sarah shared memories of her mother, the pain of losing her so young, the weight of responsibility she had carried since her father fell ill. She told Tom things she had never told anyone, fears and insecurities she had kept hidden. Tom proved to be a good listener, never judging, always supportive. He treated her father with respect and kindness, often staying to play checkers with him or read the newspaper aloud when his eyes were too tired. Her father's health continued to improve slowly. The doctor attributed it partly to reduced stress, and Sarah knew the financial security of the Rocking W contract had helped tremendously. But she also thought her father was rallying because he was happy for her, excited about the possibility of seeing her settled with a good man. By mid-November, the Arizona weather had cooled considerably, and Sarah began wearing a shawl for her early morning deliveries. Tom had taken to riding alongside her wagon on these trips, keeping her company and ensuring her safety. One morning, as they rode together through the pre-dawn darkness, Tom reached over from his horse and took her hand where it rested on the wagon seat. "I have been thinking," he said, "about the future." Sarah's heart skipped. "What about it?" "I have saved almost $2,000 over the years. It is enough for a down payment on a small piece of land. There is a property for sale just east of town, about 80 acres with a creek running through it and a small house that needs work." "That sounds wonderful, Tom." "I was thinking it could be a combination operation, some cattle but also dairy. I could learn the dairy business properly from you, and we could build something together." He paused, then added quietly, "If you would be willing to take on a partner." Sarah understood what he was really asking. "What kind of partner?" Tom pulled his horse closer, near enough that he could see her face in the growing light. "The permanent kind. Sarah, I know we have only known each other a couple of months, but I am more certain of this than anything in my life. I love you. I want to marry you, build a life with you, wake up next to you every morning for the rest of my days. Will you be my wife?" Joy exploded in Sarah's chest. "Yes. Yes, Tom, I will marry you." He let out a whoop of excitement that startled both their animals, then quickly steadied his horse and urged it close enough that he could lean over and kiss her. It was awkward, trying to kiss while mounted and managing the reins, but neither of them cared. "I want to do this properly," Tom said. "I will speak to your father today, get his blessing, and I want to buy you a proper ring from the jeweler in town. You do not need to spend money on a ring, Tom. I want to. I want everyone to know you are spoken for." His eyes were shining with happiness. "I want to marry you as soon as possible, if your father approves. Maybe after the Christmas season." "That sounds perfect." They completed the delivery to the Rocking W in a daze of happiness, and George congratulated them heartily when Tom shared the news. By the time Sarah completed her other deliveries and returned home, Tom was already there, his horse tied to the porch rail. He met her at the wagon, helping her down. "I spoke to your father. He gave us his blessing, said he could not think of anyone he would rather see you married to." Sarah threw her arms around Tom's neck, not caring who might see. "I am so happy I can barely breathe." "Me too. I never knew I could feel like this." They told everyone they encountered about the engagement. The news spread through Fort McDowell with the speed of wildfire, and Sarah received congratulations and well wishes everywhere she went. The townspeople who had watched her struggle to maintain the farm alone were genuinely happy to see her finding love and partnership. Tom made good on his promise and bought Sarah a ring, a simple gold band with a small diamond that must have cost him a significant portion of his savings. When he slipped it on her finger one Sunday afternoon, Sarah cried tears of pure joy. "It is beautiful, Tom. I will treasure it always." "Not as much as I treasure you." They set the wedding date for the first Saturday in January, giving them time to make preparations, and for Tom to finalize the purchase of the property he had mentioned. Sarah learned that Tom had indeed bought the 80 acres, securing a mortgage with his savings as the down payment. "It will be tight financially at first," Tom admitted. "But between my wages from the Rocking W and what we can make from the farm, we should manage. Eventually, I hope to run the ranch full-time and leave the Rocking W, but that may take a few years." "We will make it work," Sarah assured him. "We are both hard workers, and now we will be working together." They spent their Sundays fixing up the small house on Tom's property, cleaning and making repairs. It was a simple adobe structure with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen and a sitting room, but Sarah loved it. It would be their home, a place they would build their future. Her father's health had improved enough that he could manage light work around the farm again. He and Sarah discussed what would happen after the wedding. "The dairy should be yours," her father said. "You have earned it with your hard work these past months. I will sign it over to you and Tom as a wedding gift." "Papa, you do not have to do that. I want to. You two can combine operations, run the dairy from Tom's property and sell this place if you want, or keep it as extra pasture land. Either way, it is yours." Sarah hugged her father tightly. "Thank you, Papa, for everything. Thank you, daughter, for saving us when I could not. You are stronger than I ever imagined." The weeks before Christmas were busy with wedding preparations. Sarah sewed herself a new dress with help from several women in town who wanted to contribute. It was made of cream-colored cotton with delicate lace trim, simple but beautiful. Tom arranged for the ceremony to be held in the town church, with a reception following at the community hall. The Rocking W foreman offered to provide beef for the celebration, and various townspeople volunteered to contribute food and decorations. On Christmas Eve, Tom and Sarah attended services together, sitting with her father and several of Tom's friends from the ranch. Afterward, as they stood outside under the stars, Tom pulled Sarah close. "This time next week you will be my wife. I can hardly believe it. Sometimes I think I must be dreaming. If you are, then I am having the same dream." He kissed her softly. "I promise you, Sarah, I will spend every day trying to make you happy. I will work hard, provide for you, stand by you through whatever comes. I know you will, and I promise to do the same." The week between Christmas and the wedding passed in a blur. Sarah completed her final days of milk deliveries as a single woman, though she would continue the route after the wedding, now as Tom's wife and partner rather than alone. Her father grew stronger each day, determined to walk her down the aisle at the wedding. Sarah was grateful beyond words to still have him, to know he would see her married and settled. On the morning of January 3rd, 1883, Sarah woke in her childhood bedroom for the last time. She lay there thinking about everything that had changed since that morning in October, when Tom Sullivan first appeared in her life. She had been alone then, scared and overwhelmed, shouldering burdens too heavy for one person. Now she was embarking on a partnership, a marriage, a future filled with love and possibility. Tom had not just offered her help with chores or financial security, though those things mattered. He had offered her his heart, his unwavering support, his absolute devotion. Several women from town arrived mid-morning to help Sarah prepare. They did her hair in an elegant style with small flowers woven through it and helped her into the cream dress. When Sarah looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the radiant woman staring back. "You look like an angel," her father said, appearing in the doorway. His eyes were bright with tears. "Your mother would be so proud. I wish she could be here. She is, in her way. I feel her presence strongly today." The church was packed when they arrived. It seemed like the entire town had turned out for the wedding, along with most of the cowboys from the Rocking W. Sarah saw George the cook in the front row, beaming like a proud uncle. But she only had eyes for Tom, standing at the altar in a new suit that must have cost him dearly. His face when he saw her walking down the aisle was something she would remember forever. Awe and love and absolute certainty. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. Tom's hands shook slightly as he slipped the wedding band onto her finger to join the engagement ring. His voice was rough with emotion as he spoke his vows. I, Thomas Sullivan, take you, Sarah Ellis, to be my lawfully wedded wife. I promise to love you, honor you, cherish you in sickness and in health, in prosperity and hardship, until death parts us. You are my heart, my home, my everything. Sarah's own voice trembled as she spoke her vows. I, Sarah Ellis, take you, Thomas Sullivan, to be my lawfully wedded husband. I promise to love you, stand beside you, build a life with you in joy and sorrow in all circumstances, for as long as we both shall live. You are my partner, my love, my future. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife and told Tom he could kiss his bride, the kiss was sweet and tender, a promise and a celebration all in one. The reception was a joyous affair. There was more food than anyone could eat, music and dancing, toasts and laughter. Tom and Sarah danced until their feet hurt, surrounded by well-wishers and friends. As evening fell, they said their goodbyes and drove to their new home, the little adobe house on 80 acres that would be the foundation of their future. Tom carried Sarah over the threshold, both of them laughing. Inside, a fire had already been lit in the fireplace, courtesy of Tom's friends from the ranch. The house was simple but clean, furnished with a few basic necessities and the promise of more to come. Tom set Sarah down gently and took both her hands in his. Welcome home, Mrs. Sullivan. I love how that sounds. They stood there in the firelight, and Sarah felt overwhelmed with gratitude for this man, this moment, this new beginning. I love you so much, Tom said quietly. I never thought I could be this happy. I love you too. Thank you for waiting each morning just to see my smile. Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me when I felt invisible. You could never be invisible to me. You are the most remarkable woman I have ever known. They kissed deeply, passionately, no longer constrained by propriety or hesitation. They were husband and wife now, partners in every sense, and the future stretched before them bright with possibility. That night, in their small adobe home with the fire crackling and the desert wind whispering outside, Tom and Sarah began their life together in earnest. They made love for the first time with tenderness and care, learning each other, giving and receiving, cementing their bond in the most intimate way. Afterward, lying in Tom's arms with her head on his chest, Sarah felt at peace in a way she never had before. This was home. This was love. This was everything she had dreamed of but never quite believed she deserved. "What are you thinking?" Tom asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "That I am the luckiest woman in the world. I think I might have you beat. I am definitely the luckiest man." They talked late into the night, making plans and dreaming together. They would combine the dairy operation with cattle ranching, build up the herd gradually while maintaining the milk deliveries that provided steady income. Eventually, they hoped to expand, maybe hire help, build a larger house. "And children," Tom said softly. "I want children with you, Sarah, a whole house full of them if we are blessed. I want that too. I want to build a real family with you." The next morning they woke early as always, but now they woke together. Tom helped Sarah with the milking, learning the rhythms and techniques she had perfected over years. They worked in comfortable silence, occasionally exchanging smiles that spoke volumes. The milk deliveries took on new meaning now. It was not just Sarah's route anymore, but something they did together. Tom drove the wagon while Sarah handled the deliveries, and their customers commented on how happy they both looked. At the rocking W, George took one look at them and shook his head with a knowing grin. "Ah, newlyweds. You both have that glow. I am happy for you, truly." The first weeks of marriage were an adjustment as they learned to live together, to navigate shared space and compromise. Tom learned that Sarah liked to read before bed, so he built her a small shelf for books. Sarah learned that Tom preferred strong coffee in the morning, so she adjusted how she brewed it. They had their first argument about 3 weeks in, a silly disagreement about how to arrange the kitchen that escalated because they were both tired and stressed. But they worked through it, talking honestly and apologizing sincerely, and emerged stronger for it. Her father visited often, his health continuing to improve now that he was free from the burden of running the farm alone. He loved seeing Sarah so happy, loved Tom like the son he had never had. "You chose well, daughter," he told Sarah one Sunday afternoon. "That man would move mountains for you. I know. I am blessed." Winter gave way to spring, and the farm began to thrive under their combined efforts. Tom proved to be a quick learner and a tireless worker. He built a new milking barn, expanded the pastures, and gradually increased their cattle herd. The milk route remained steady, and Sarah found she enjoyed it even more now that Tom often accompanied her. Their morning conversations ranged from practical business matters to philosophy and dreams, and Sarah treasured this quiet time together. One morning in early April, as they drove toward town, Sarah felt unusually tired and slightly nauseous. She had been feeling off for a few days but had attributed it to hard work. Tom noticed immediately. "Are you all right? You look pale." "I am fine, just a bit tired." But the nausea intensified, and Sarah barely made it off the wagon before getting sick by the side of the road. Tom was beside her instantly, holding her hair back and rubbing her back gently. "We are going to see the doctor," he said firmly. "Tom, I am fine. It is probably just something I ate. Humor me, please." They made the milk deliveries quickly, then Tom drove straight to the doctor's office. "Doctor." Morrison examined Sarah thoroughly, asking questions about her symptoms and timeline. When he finished, he was smiling. "Congratulations, Mrs. Sullivan. You are with child. I would estimate about 6 or 7 weeks along." Sarah's hand flew to her stomach, shock and joy flooding through her in equal measure. "Are you certain?" "Quite certain. You should expect to deliver sometime in late October or early November." In the waiting room, Tom was pacing nervously. When Sarah emerged, he rushed to her side. "What did he say? Are you ill?" "Not ill." Sarah could not stop smiling. "Pregnant. We are going to have a baby, Tom." His expression went through several rapid changes: shock, disbelief, then pure elation. He let out a whoop and picked Sarah up, spinning her around before quickly setting her down, suddenly worried. "I should not have done that. Are you all right? Should you be lifting things? What did the doctor say?" Sarah laughed at his concern. "I am fine. The doctor said to take reasonable care, but that I can continue normal activities for several more months." They drove home in a daze of happiness, already making plans and dreaming about the baby. Tom was convinced it would be a boy, while Sarah thought a girl. They debated names and discussed expanding the house to add a proper nursery. When they told her father that evening, he cried tears of joy. "A grandchild! I never thought I would live to see the day. Thank you, both of you, for this blessing." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through spring and into summer. Sarah continued the milk deliveries into her 6th month, before Tom finally insisted she stay home and rest. He took over the route himself, though he admitted the customers missed seeing Sarah. Tom was attentive to the point of being overprotective, constantly worried about Sarah's health and comfort. He built a rocking chair for the nursery, carved a beautiful cradle from oak, and painted the small bedroom in cheerful colors. In late October, as the weather began to cool and the cottonwoods turned gold, Sarah went into labor. Her father rode for the doctor while Tom stayed by her side, holding her hand and wiping her forehead with a cool cloth. Labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Tom refused to leave, ignoring the doctor's suggestion that he wait outside. He supported Sarah through each contraction, encouraging her and telling her how strong she was. Finally, as the sun began to set on October 28th, their son entered the world with a healthy cry. The doctor placed the baby in Sarah's arms, and she looked down at the tiny, perfect face with wonder. "He is beautiful," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Tom knelt beside the bed, his own eyes wet. "He is perfect. You are perfect. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for this gift." They named him James Thomas Sullivan, after Tom's father and Tom himself. Little James had Tom's dark hair and what looked like it might become Sarah's hazel eyes. The early days with a newborn were exhausting but wonderful. Tom took on extra work around the farm so Sarah could focus on the baby. He proved to be a devoted father, walking the floor with James at night when the baby fussed, changing diapers without complaint, and staring at his son with undisguised adoration. Sarah's father was an equally devoted grandfather, visiting almost daily to hold the baby and tell him stories about his grandmother and the family history. As the months passed and James grew, the family settled into new rhythms. The farm continued to prosper, and Tom was able to hire a young man from town to help with the heavier work, giving him more time with his family. On their second wedding anniversary, as they sat on the porch watching James toddle around the yard, Tom pulled Sarah close. "These past 2 years have been the happiest of my life. Every morning I wake up and can barely believe this is real, that you are my wife, that we have this beautiful son, this life we have built together. I feel the same way. Sometimes I think back to that morning when you first spoke to me outside the saloon, how nervous I was, how alone I felt. And now look at us." "I knew that morning," Tom said. "The moment I saw you carrying those milk canisters, your face so serious and determined, I knew you were special. I told myself I was just securing a business arrangement, but the truth is I was already halfway in love with you." "I was attracted to you immediately," Sarah admitted, "but I tried to tell myself not to be foolish, that you were just being polite. I never imagined it would lead to all of this." They watched James for a while, their son babbling to himself as he played with wooden blocks Tom had carved for him. "You ever think about having more children?" Tom asked. "I do. I would love for James to have siblings. Me too. A big family, children running all over this place, filling it with noise and laughter." Over the next several years, their wishes came true. A daughter, Emma, arrived 2 years after James, followed by twin boys, Daniel and David, 2 years after that. The house was expanded twice to accommodate their growing family, and the farm prospered beyond their early dreams. Tom eventually left his position at the Rocking W to focus entirely on their own operation. The dairy business remained steady, but they also built a successful cattle operation. They hired several ranch hands and a woman from town to help Sarah with the children and household. Sarah's father remained an integral part of their lives until he passed peacefully in his sleep when James was 7. It was a sad time, but also one filled with gratitude that he had lived to know his grandchildren and see his daughter so happy and settled. Through it all, through the hard work and occasional setbacks, through the joys and sorrows that make up a life, Tom and Sarah's love remained constant. They still took time each morning to have coffee together before the children woke, talking and planning and simply being together. They still made the milk deliveries together when they could, now with children piled in the back of the wagon, laughing and singing. The route had become legendary in Fort McDowell, the Ellis Sullivan dairy known for quality products and the loving family behind it. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Tom planned a surprise for Sarah. He arranged for the children to stay with friends and took Sarah on a picnic to the spot where he had first told her he loved her, near the church where they had attended the social that changed everything. As they sat on a blanket watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Tom took Sarah's hand. 10 years ago, I was a lonely cowboy with dreams I thought would never come true. You changed everything, Sarah. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You made me the happiest man alive. You did the same for me. I was drowning, trying to keep everything together alone, feeling like I would never have more than just survival. You gave me love, partnership, and a beautiful life. I thank God every day that you decided to wait by that cookhouse to see me smile. Tom laughed. George used to tease me mercilessly about that. He said I looked like a lovesick fool, timing my work to be near the cookhouse whenever you arrived. You were waiting for me, every single morning. I told myself it was just to be friendly, but the truth was I was desperate for even a glimpse of you, a few words, anything. Your smile became the best part of my day before I even knew your name. Sarah kissed him tenderly. I started looking forward to seeing you too. I would take extra care with my appearance, tell myself it was just to be professional, but really I wanted you to notice me. I noticed everything. The way the morning light caught your hair, the determined set of your shoulders as you carried those heavy canisters, the kindness in your eyes when you spoke to people. I was captivated. They stayed until the stars came out, reminiscing and dreaming about the future. Tom told Sarah he was thinking of expanding their operation further, maybe buying additional land. Sarah suggested they might want to consider getting involved in local politics, using their success to help other families. The years continued to pass, marked by both achievements and challenges. A drought one year tested their resources, but they survived through careful planning and community support. A particularly harsh winter another year strained their finances, but they made it through. Their children grew into capable, kind young people. James showed an aptitude for the business side of ranching and often accompanied Tom to negotiate deals. Emma was brilliant with the animals, gentling even the most difficult horses. The twins were inseparable and worked together on various farm improvements with impressive ingenuity. Tom and Sarah grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. Tom's dark hair turned silver at the temples, and lines appeared around his eyes from years of squinting in the sun and smiling. Sarah's blonde hair showed threads of white, and her hands bore the marks of decades of hard work, but Tom still thought her the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. They still made time to dance together in the kitchen when no one was watching. They still held hands while walking the property, pointing out changes and improvements. They still kissed goodnight every evening and woke each morning grateful for another day together. By the time their 25th anniversary arrived, the Sullivan Ranch was one of the most successful operations in the territory. Arizona had achieved statehood, and Fort McDowell had grown from a small frontier town into a proper community with schools, churches, and established businesses. The anniversary celebration was held at the ranch, with what seemed like half the territory in attendance. Cowboys who had worked with Tom at the Rocking W decades earlier came to pay their respects. George the cook, now retired, gave a touching speech about young love and the power of a smile. Standing before their family and friends, Tom raised his glass. 25 years ago, I married the woman of my dreams. Sarah Ellis was delivering fresh milk each morning, and I was just a cowboy who waited to see her smile. That smile became my whole world, and she became my everything. Here is to 25 more years together. Sarah stood and took Tom's hand. My husband is too modest. He did not just wait to see me smile. He gave me reasons to smile every single day. He turned my burden into a partnership, my loneliness into love, and my struggles into triumph. I am blessed beyond measure to be his wife. The celebration lasted well into the night, filled with music, dancing, and stories. Their children and now several grandchildren, James having married young, danced and laughed. The ranch glowed with lantern light and joy. Late in the evening, Tom and Sarah slipped away from the party and walked to the creek that ran through their property. The same creek that had been there when Tom first bought the land, when it was just a dream and a prayer. "We built something remarkable," Sarah said, looking back toward the house and barns, the corrals and pastures that made up their empire. "We did. But the ranch, the business, all of that is just details. What we really built was a family, a love that has endured everything life threw at us. That is the real achievement." Sarah leaned against Tom, his arm around her waist, and they stood in comfortable silence listening to the water and the distant sounds of celebration. "You ever regret it?" Tom asked. "The hard work, the sacrifices?" "Never, not for a single moment. Do you?" "No. Loving you, building this life with you, has been the greatest adventure of my life. I would not change a thing." They stood there until the stars wheeled overhead. Two souls who had found each other against all odds in the wild frontier of Arizona territory. A cowboy and a dairy farmer's daughter who had built an empire on love, hard work, and the magic of a smile shared each morning. The years that followed brought more grandchildren, the joy of watching their children build families of their own, and the satisfaction of seeing the ranch continue to thrive under the next generation's management. Tom and Sarah gradually stepped back from daily operations, spending their time traveling, visiting family, and enjoying the peace they had earned. They took a trip back to Texas so Tom could show Sarah where he grew up. They visited San Francisco and marveled at the modern city. But they always returned to Fort McDowell, to their ranch, to the life they had built together. On their 40th anniversary, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, Tom and Sarah renewed their vows in the same church where they had married. Tom's voice was rougher with age, and he needed reading glasses to see the vows he had written, but the love in his eyes was unchanged. "Sarah, my love, my partner, my everything. 40 years ago I promised to love you forever. Today I renew that promise. You are still the most beautiful thing I see each morning. Your smile still lights up my world. I love you more today than I thought possible then, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." Sarah's own vows brought tears to everyone present. "Tom, you have been my rock, my joy, my greatest blessing. You saw me when I felt invisible. You gave me strength when I was weak. You loved me at my worst and celebrated me at my best. Every morning with you has been a gift. Every day by your side has been an adventure. I love you beyond words, and I will love you beyond this life." They danced together at the reception, moving slowly but gracefully, lost in each other's eyes as they had been on their wedding day. "Thank you," Sarah whispered. "For what? For waiting. For noticing me, for loving me. For building this beautiful life with me." Tom pulled her closer. "Thank you for smiling, for saying yes, for making every day worth living." As they swayed to the music, surrounded by the family and legacy they had created, both Tom and Sarah felt overwhelming gratitude. Life had not always been easy, but it had been rich, full of love and meaning and purpose. Their final years together were peaceful. They spent mornings on the porch, drinking coffee and watching the sunrise over the land they had worked so hard to build. They told stories to their great-grandchildren about the old days, about when Arizona was still a territory, about cowboys and cattle drives and the wild frontier. Tom passed first, at the age of 87, peacefully in his sleep with Sarah holding his hand. He had lived a full life, rich in love and accomplishment, and he left knowing his family would carry on the legacy they had built. Sarah followed 3 years later, never quite the same after losing her beloved Tom. On a quiet morning in spring, she simply did not wake up, having gone to sleep with a smile on her face, perhaps dreaming of reuniting with the cowboy who had waited each morning just to see her smile. They were buried side by side on the ranch, under a cottonwood tree near the creek. Their gravestone was simple but perfect, bearing both their names and a single inscription chosen by their children. She delivered fresh milk each morning. He waited just to see her smile. Together they built a legacy of love. The Sullivan Ranch continued to thrive for generations, passed down through the family. But more than land or cattle or business success, Tom and Sarah's true legacy was the example they set. They showed everyone who knew them what real love looked like. Patient, devoted, enduring, growing stronger with each passing year. Their great-great-grandchildren still tell the story of how it all began, how a young dairy farmer's daughter and a cowboy found each other in territorial Arizona, how a simple smile led to a lifetime of happiness. The story has become family legend, a reminder that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, that kindness and devotion can build something that lasts forever. And sometimes, on quiet mornings when the light slants just right across the ranch, those who knew them swear they can almost see two figures walking hand in hand by the creek, still together, still in love, their bond unbroken even by death. A cowboy and his love, united forever by the magic that began when he waited each morning just to see her smile. The end.